ahead.
Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners policy session on this March 9th, 2022. I want to start off by thanking my commissioners for all the fine work we did yesterday on acknowledging the situation in the Ukraine. And we will be allocating some monies tomorrow during our business meeting, which I'm very happy to do, of course. We've also agreed to put out a statement of support, and we've decided that that statement of support should come out next week, so all the commissioners can have an opportunity to view it. And we want to make sure that the statement is very supportive of all peoples in the area and all peoples in Clackamas County. So we're going to wait to do that next week. Commissioners, you will be receiving a copy of that in your email, and please be free to make any comments to your PA on that. Gary, with that in mind, what's up first?
Thank you, Chair Smith. The first session today is Metro Regional Transportation Plan, and boy, I'm going to miss this, MTIP. We'll define this in a moment. Amendment direction regarding the I-205 tolling program. Shannon, would you please bring in Dan Johnson and Jamie Stasny? They will tell you what the acronyms are. But this is a decision point for you today, commissioners, to advise Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Shull as they represent the county at these regional transportation tables. But we'll pause a moment for our staff to join. So Dan Johnson is the Director of Transportation and Development. Jamie Stasny is Regional Transportation and Land Use Policy Advisor. Dan and Jamie, go ahead, please.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners and Administrator Schmidt. Jamie and I are pleased to be here today and update you on the I-205 tolling program Regional Transportation Plan, also known as the RTP, and the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, known as the MTIP, amendments that will be up for a vote at JPAC, where Commissioner Savas is the county's representative, and MPAC, where Commissioner Shull is the county's representative, later this month. To set the stage for this discussion, it's important to note two things. First, tolling is not being proposed by Clackamas County. The 205 toll program is being proposed by ODOT as directed by the state legislature. And second, ODOT already has what is called Section 129 authority to toll roads under their jurisdiction. So we as staff are working at the direction of this board to influence the outcomes of the program to make it the best possible outcomes for our county. Your values and outcomes document has served as a North Star for our staff since you adopted it last year. I'm going to turn it over to Jamie Stasny so she can provide you with context and an update on where we are today. And at the end of today's update, there will be time for questions, discussions, and ultimately for you to provide direction to your JPAC and MPAC representatives on the upcoming votes. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt, and Shannon. It's good to see you all back in front of you today to talk about something we've been talking about now for almost a year. So this has culminated to a point, as Dan said, where there will be a decision made on next steps. So that's what we're going to talk about. So first, I'm going to go back a little ways. I'm going to provide some history and context to help ground our conversation today. Then we'll dive into the issue at hand, ODOT's RTP and MTIP amendments for the I-205 toll program. As you know and have heard before from us, ODOT's in the process of conducting a National Environmental Policy Act process, or NEPA process, on the concept of tolling I-205. As Dan said, this is proposed by ODOT as directed by the legislature. This is not a Clackamas County project. This process, the NEPA process, was predicated by House Bill 2017, which both identified the I-205 capital project as one of the 3 bottleneck projects of statewide significance and directed ODOT to pursue the idea of tolling on I-205 and I-5. A tolling feasibility study was then conducted with regional participation. Your own Commissioner Savas participated in that feasibility study back in 2017. That study suggested that tolling pilot projects should be implemented on I-205 and I-5 using a regional approach. ODOT then worked with the Federal Highway Administration to develop a path toward getting the I-205 tolling project online as soon as possible to fund the I-205 improvements project or capital project. while at the same time pursuing a plan to toll I-5 and the rest of I-205, which is called the Regional Mobility Pricing Program. I'm going to share my screen briefly and bring up a map, which you've all seen before. This map has evolved over time. Projects have shown up, clarifications have been made, but I just wanted to ground us in this map. This is now called the Urban Mobility Strategy, or as you've heard us refer to it before, the RMPP. So you can see the 7-mile stretch of the I-205 toll project shown down below in green, 7 miles, including the Abernathy Bridge seismic improvements. And then the navy portions are the rest of the tolling that's anticipated, called the RMPP, Regional Mobility Pricing Program. So right next, so ODOT initiated this NEPA process to understand possible impacts of implementation of a toll program in the I-205 area. And they also started early preliminary engineering NEPA process on the RMPP for the tolling for the rest of the region. ODOT then initiated a series of requests to amend the Regional Transportation Plan and the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, the RTP and the MTIP acronyms that Gary referred to earlier. And they are doing this because these amendments are required by the federal government, the FHWA, for ODOT to be able to complete the NEPA process and to program the funds that have been allocated by the Oregon Transportation Commission in 2021 for this process. So they're doing this because they're required to. I want to go just quickly to the capital project. This is really confusing for all of us. And so I want to clarify this just so we're all on the same page. The plans for the I-205 capital project, which include the construction of the Abernathy Bridge, seismic improvements of the on-ramps, and the 7-mile stretch of additional lanes, that project has already gone through the same NEPA process, was already approved, and so it's already done in that way. And it also has already gone through an MTIP amendment, similar to what we're talking about today, to program funds to build phase 1A. So phase 1A includes the Abernathy Bridge section and the on-ramps nearby. This critical project includes these seismic upgrades to the Abernathy Bridge. It adds a 3rd lane in each direction for the 7-mile stretch. It's been engineered and it's ready to construct. Phase 1A of the capital project is already out to bid, and anticipated construction timeline start is June of this year. So we're getting really close to construction. As shared with you during my last update, the OTC sent a letter to JPAC saying if there was not an approval of these amendments, they would not be moving forward with letting that bid or beginning construction of phase 1A as on the current schedule. So just want to provide that for context. It's all connected, but it is separate in the eyes of the federal government as far as the approvals go. So that's the history and the context. I'm going to move now into the issue at hand, which is the MTIP and RTP amendments. Before we move into that, and it is really technical, I'm going to try and stay at a high level, but we're going to have to do some deep diving today because it is really nuanced and complicated. But before I go there, I want to clarify there are 3 votes that are going to be happening on these items. First, March 17th, JPAC is going to be voting and making a recommendation on both the RTP and the MTIP to the Metro Council. Commissioner Savas is your representative, of course, on JPAC. On March 30th, MPAC will be making a recommendation, but their recommendation to Metro Council will just be on the RTP amendment because that is a land use document and MPAC is a land use group. And then Metro Council will be voting on the entire package, both items, on April 14th. So I want to also just say, as a reminder, the action is to add a preliminary engineering phase, and this is all spelled out in our staff report, but a PE phase, they call it, to the RTP and the MTIP. In the RTP, it will clarify the connection between the toll project and the capital project. And in the MTIP, it will program about $28 million of funding that the OTC allocated almost a year ago to complete the NEPA process and to do about 30% design preliminary engineering on the gantries. So those are the actions that are taking place. So last time I came to share that JPAC had delayed their vote last month at the request of TPAC. And the reason that delay was requested, as I shared with you before, is because the amendments that had come in front of TPAC were provided with very little notice. The final materials were provided at 5:30 the night before, and TPAC did not have sufficient time to review the materials, and they had a lot of concerns still that they wanted to try and dig into and address in these amendments. And JPAC thought that was reasonable. They had a conversation about what concerns they had as JPAC members. Those were recorded. They were provided to TPAC. They're also in the packet for today's meeting if you want to look through them. TPAC staff, including your staff, Karen Berg is our rep on TPAC, worked together with all of the regional staff to develop an approach to ensure that JPAC's concerns, the county's concerns, our city's concerns were addressed in these amendments prior to them moving forward for a vote. So staff summarized all of these concerns into one document, and then ODOT took that document and turned it into what is shown as attachment 4 in your packet. That is the commitments document. It's 4 pages of commitments that they're making to address the concerns that were raised. TPAC appreciated this set of commitments that were put forward by ODOT, but did not feel that those commitments had significant teeth for making sure that there was accountability from ODOT and following through on those. We do have some trust challenges with ODOT. There's a trust deficit, and we're trying to figure out how to build that trust. So that's one of the actions that we're trying to do by creating all of this additional accountability. So TPAC staff, including your staff, then put together attachment number 6 in your packet, and we're going to look at this one in just a moment, which incorporates these commitments into the actual body of the RTP amendment and the RTP project description. That document is binding, and it is critical in the eyes of your staff that these commitments are reflected in the actual RTP and RTP project description. So I'm going to stop this screen share and share that document. And I'm almost finished. We're going to move to questions shortly. Give me 1 second. Thank you for your patience. Okay, can you see that document, commissioners?
There we go.
Oh, great. So this document, which again is as attached in your packet or included in your packet, is the language of the RTP amendment project description. So the paragraph at the top is mostly what was already proposed to be included in the RTP. And all of the other items below it, the numbered items, are items that were added by staff, as well as a reference to that commitments document that I just talked about. So it essentially will incorporate all of the 4-page commitments document that are addressing all of the concerns of JPAC, the county, and the cities. And then this will be worked into what is being brought forward to JPAC and Metro Council. So what you see as edits are edits that were offered by ODOT staff. ODOT staff has been working really hard to figure out how we can move forward together. And so they suggested incorporation of these items, and we're supportive of that with some small changes. So I want to just run through those quickly with you. First, Clackamas County staff proposed removing initial design for toll infrastructure from the RTP amendment, essentially saying just move forward with the NEPA process and not with design work for the gantries. So we were suggesting to remove that language. ODOT was supportive of that, but said they're going to need to do that work. So whether this says it or not, they need to do that work at some point. The next amendment here to number 3, what staff had put forward is that no one part of the system is tolled until FHWA has approved the RMPP or ODOT has developed a plan that the region supports. ODOT suggested the amendments that say no part of the system is tolled until the RMPP has been approved or ODOT has developed a plan that the region supports. This is very nuanced. It looks very simple, but it is very nuanced. As we all know, there's a lot of power in words. This is, even though it's just a few small words, it's a big step forward together. ODOT has heard the region's concerns, not just Clackamas County and our cities, but the region's concerns and interest in seeing tolling be implemented as a full system, if it is indeed going to be implemented, and not as a piecemeal approach to solving bottleneck projects. And so this is an acknowledgement that they need to integrate those two plans together and that they need to have a plan that the region supports and approval of that regional plan before they move forward with tolling on any one part of the system, i.e. 205. So this is a little less specific than what was offered by staff, but it is fairly close, and I think it gets to the intent. The next amendment that ODOT suggested was regarding equity, ensuring equity in the process and outcomes. Regional staff had proposed that there would be exemptions, that there would be income-based exemptions and revenue projections necessary to fund the climate and equity efforts identified by EMAC, the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee, and local jurisdictions. And ODOT struck that. They said that they are not going to be able to fund everything with the toll revenue, and this conversation is going to be evolving soon, but they did not feel that needed to be included in this document. And I have one more edit, and then I know you probably have questions. There'll leave plenty of space for that. The last edit that they offered was with regards to transit and multimodal funding. The transit and multimodal corridor strategy that they're developing is going to talk about what investments need to be made to help provide viable alternatives for people that don't want to drive on 205 and pay the toll. And they added the words "and regional partners," showing that ODOT is not alone in figuring out how to fund these projects, but that will be done in partnership with the region using both tolling funds as well as existing funds like the STIP, where a lot of the transit funds are coming from already. So that was an addition from TriMet and I think also from ODOT. So those are the 4 amendments. With those amendments, ODOT staff said we're supportive of this being incorporated into the RTP. I will just say that was a huge step forward in our negotiations with ODOT staff, trying to strike the right balance between the region's concerns and their commitments, and their willingness to integrate this into the language of the RTP and the RTP project description gives more accountability, as I mentioned before. So that was a huge step that happened right before TPAC on last Thursday. So at TPAC, there were votes taken. And I want to run through those, and then we'll move forward to discussion and questions. So at TPAC, for the RTP, TPAC voted to direct Metro staff and attorneys to integrate the intent of this attachment that we just went through into the RTP amendment language and the RTP project description, and to bring that version to JPAC for consideration. So that passed. Essentially with unanimous support from the group to move that forward with those amendments. So now Metro staff and attorneys are taking that document we just looked at and integrating it into the RTP language. We do not yet have the final version of what will come in front of JPAC, and we won't until we have the packet. But that was the vote there on the RTP. And then on the MTIP, there was a vote to approve the MTIP amendment, there was a motion from Clackamas County staff to split the MTIP amendment into 2 pieces, essentially to say $20 million would be available now for ODOT to finish the NEPA process, and that they could come back later this year and ask for the remaining $8 million so that they could move forward with preliminary engineering of the gantries. That motion from Clackamas County failed, and they ended up passing the MTIP as proposed by ODOT. The group did, with several voting against it, including Clackamas County and Clackamas County cities, also the port. So there was some concern still about the approach, but that is moving forward. So what will be in front of JPAC will be this version of the RTP with the staff comments integrated, and then the MTIP as it was proposed by ODOT for the full amount, approximately $28 million, to move forward with NEPA and preliminary engineering of the gantries. So let's see here. I wanted to say, share just one more thing, and then I will be open for questions. Give me just 1 second. Here we go. All right. So what you see in front of you here is called the engagement timeline. This engagement timeline includes different colored stars to indicate decision points at different bodies. And I just want to call your attention to that bottom line, which is the I-205 toll project. We are right now in March of 2022. As you can see, there is a green star here for the RTP amendment and the MTIP. A green star means that that's a Metro and JPAC decision. There is another green star over here in Q4 of 2023. It is at that point that there will be another opportunity for the region to vote on whether or not they want the 205 toll project to move forward. That is when they will come back to seek an amendment to the MTIP for construction funds, to program construction funds and implement tolling. So I just want to call your attention to that. We are, as you can see from this graphic, we are at the beginning of a very long process. Through that process, Metro will be updating the entire RTP. We're talking about one little amendment to one project. The region and Metro are going to be updating the entire RTP. This process has already started, where tolling policy will be developed and will be discussed, and that will all move forward together. So there are many, many conversations coming up around toll policy, around 205 tolling, around the regional mobility pricing project, and how these pieces fit together. So I just wanted to call that out. There is an opportunity for another vote at the end of 2023. And this is available in your packet if you want to spend some more time with it. So with that, I think that's all for my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions. But before I do that, Commissioner Savas has been your transportation liaison for many years and has been intimately involved in this process. So I wanted to give him some space to add to what I have shared, or correct me if I've said something wrong. Commissioner Savas.
Thank you, Jamie, for a great job, and big shout out to our staff, Jamie, Mike, Dan, everyone, and also the regional staff that have been working on this. So we're in an unusual place where we are all, somewhat united, but we're all united in one place for different reasons regionally. So we're not all on the same page. And so the folks in Portland, for example, don't have the same or will bear the same consequences in circumstances that we will here in Clackamas County. As Jamie kind of alluded to in 2017, after House Bill 2017 passed, I did sit on a committee. I raised those concerns, almost exact concerns for almost 5 years ago then, as we are today. And then, myself and Commissioner Rogers from Washington County were the only two no votes on that committee that moved this whole thing forward. And with that, following that, in July of 2018, the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners sent a letter to ODOT expressing the very concerns we're expressing today. And it's been 4 years, 3 years, 2017, 2018. So yeah, 3.5, 4 years. And I honestly have not seen much in the way of any substantive response in a way that would address the diversion, which we raised significantly. We asked for and suggested that they have 3 lanes for people to travel, and they only toll the new lanes or the new capacity. That was part of that letter and that request. And none of that's being considered. And as recent as last week, and it's come up before, but at least ODOT is saying it, this will be the first type of tolling project, RMPP, in the country. I think that's pretty significant. Why should we be experimenting and with really, frankly, the section of highway, 7 miles, that is the farthest away from readiness, in my opinion? There's no frontage roads. There's no alternative paths. There's no grid structure. There's no transit. We have safety issues. We currently have a congested bottleneck area of this 5, 6, 7 miles. And we currently have approximately 6 hours of congestion a day, 5 days a week, the business days. And we're supposed to accept going to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of diversion as a result of people trying to avoid the tolls. That is not something that there's an answer for. And I think we have good grounds and good standing to put a hard no, really, frankly, on moving very, very much forward. I mean, I can see the concessions that they've made, very little, frankly. They've talked about improving some the R1 Act Plus model, like basically a group of regional people, and maybe adding a few seats for Clackamas County, the mayors of West Linn and Oregon City, perhaps, and others, to build an advisory group that can actually advise directly to the Oregon Transportation Commission. But I don't want to say it's too little too late, but it's something. So we have had that concession, but we have not had the same concessions that the city of Portland's seen, for example. They have been able to successfully leverage ODOT to have a lid over the I-5 interstate bridge, hundreds of $millions of concession. And recently, the relocation of the Tubman School at $120 million price tag. So we're seeing concessions being made. They're just not being made in Clackamas County. Anything that I can gravitate to and say, hey, that's a good idea. The RTP amendment, if you read the details, unfortunately, it really does say, by approving it, that we're all as a region okay with tolling. Let's move forward with a couple of adjustments along the way. In your packet today, there's a lot of pages. The bottom of the page that says 32, you'll see, very hard to read, don't see the magnifying glass, honestly, unless you blow it up. But it's got 5 or 6 timelines on there. And one of them says on those timelines on the RMPP portion that in March, April, that they are going to send the FHWA their recommendation for the RMPP to the Federal Highway Authority. And yet the NEPA study is not even yet complete. And Jamie knows this. She didn't say it exactly. A lot of details here. I don't want to get into the details, but you know, they're asking, they really don't need $20 million to finish the NEPA study. They've got the money to finish the NEPA study. And they're not really, so what I'm trying to say is that the NEPA study, one of the alternatives to the NEPA study, should there be red flags or concerns about safety or diversion or whatnot, one of the alternatives for the NEPA study is no build. And the NEPA study specifically, not on the construction project, but is on the project of the tolling project. So we have the option of saying, you know what, this is a dangerous section, it's not ready until those things are put in place. Perhaps maybe then you can look at tolling or regional pricing. But they're moving forward and they're suggesting by the timeline that they send to the FHWA their recommendation in a month, 2 or 3 months before the NEPA study is even scheduled to be completed. That to me is not congruent with policy and procedure. And so I just suggest, frankly, that we make our case, which is to vote no on this. That's my personal opinion. I'm just telling you. There is no, I'm gonna list them. There's no solution to diversion as of today. There's no alternative transit or funding for alternative transit that's being offered or put on the ground. There's no revenue sharing that would fund, whether it's roads or side roads or anything else, anything. So there's no means of funding anything that would alleviate any diversion. And there's no frontage road or alternative grid structure that's being proposed either. So there's nothing to do here other than bite the bullet and say we're gonna get told with no promise. Frankly, I can't in my best on my best day say that this is a good deal for Clackamas County at this point in time. And I'm willing to make that case next Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday morning being our C4 subcommittee, and then Thursday morning being the JPAC group. But I just have serious concerns that while we've got a little bit of traction, I don't see why ODOT just can't, sit back, wait on the RTP and MTIP amendment, complete their NEPA study, and then let's look at it. They have the resources to start the bridge project. They may want to say that they'll stop the project. Maybe they will. But I don't know. Is it better to have 6 hours of diversion a day or 24 hours of diversion, 7 days a week diversion? So I will stop there and let's hear what you all have to say.
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves on this, and I want Dan Johnson to weigh in. And commissioners, I want us to refer to the decision point that we have before us today. Of course, I'd like to hear all your comments on this, and you're free to do so. But we have been asked to make a decision on two very specific items, options in the recommendations. But first, Dan Johnson, I'd like you to make a comment.
Great, thank you so much. And Commissioner Savas brings up a number of points that we've been trying to trying to assess and determine and work with our partners to answer those questions. But I think it's important for us, Jamie ran through a lot of technical data, but I believe it's important for us to look at the two items that we are requesting, the options that you have, and then what staff's recommendations are. And then obviously these can be amended based on the vote of the board. But the first consideration is around the RTP amendment. There are three options. Vote yes on the RTP amendment as recommended by TPAC. Vote no on the RTP amendment. Or number three, bring forth a proposal to alter the proposed RTP amendment. Our recommendation for the RTP would be to vote yes on the RTP amendment as recommended by TPAC. The second item, and this is all in your packet, is regarding the TPAC amendment, which basically has two components to it. Vote yes on the MTIP amendment as recommended by TPAC, vote no on the MTIP amendment, or bring forth a proposal to alter the proposed MTIP amendment to remove the preliminary design for the tolling infrastructure from the amendment and to reduce the dollar amount from 28 million to 20 million, essentially the recommendation that we have made previously. We as staff are proposing that we bring forth a proposal to alter the proposed MTIP amendment to remove the preliminary design on the tolling infrastructure from the amendment and to reduce the dollar amount to 28 million to 20 million, essentially making another decision point, as Jamie discussed before. I want to reiterate what Jamie said. There will be another decision point. It's later down the road. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about this, but what this amendment would do would give the region another bite at the apple once they have additional information. So with that, Jamie and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dan. Commissioners, I would like to open this up for questions and points of clarification. And I do have one on the amendment with the edits. Number 4, regarding equity. And we've had a lot of testimony come in from our residents saying, I can't afford this. I just can't afford this. And there's evidently a low income toll report. Yeah. Has that been completed? And do we know what's in it? It's not been completed?
It has not yet been completed. It will be completed this summer and will be available for review and discussion.
Okay, and supposedly the low-income toll report will inform the NEPA process, but isn't the NEPA process being started right now?
Yeah. We are in the NEPA process now, but it will inform the NEPA process. It will become a part of the EA, or environmental assessment, the document that will become the final product of this NEPA study. It will be included in there and will influence the recommendations for the final outcome of that EA.
Okay, it looks like, the trailer's getting ahead of the horse here on a lot of the processes that ODOT is doing. Now, I understand the recommendations that staff have put forth, and I like them. I think we should consider them. And I also think when Commissioner Savas goes forward on the votes and Commissioner Scholl goes forward on the votes, the respective votes, this board needs to allow them the latitude to make a decision, to negotiate time in case something changes that we don't know about. And I'm perfectly fine with that, but I think that we need to set the sidebars here based on policy from all of us going forward. And I think our staff is just really capable on this in advising them. Commissioner Schrader, you had your hand up.
I think my question's been answered, so I'm okay.
And, commissioners, any commissioner wants to make a statement on the overall tolling issue at this time, please feel free to do this. We have been put in a situation, an untenable situation this board has. Just because we vote on this today does not mean we support the legislature's decision to toll. Just because we vote on this today does not mean we support ODOT's inequities and how they want to toll it. We are trying to work the best for our citizens to make it not as onerous on Clackamas County. Commissioner Scholl, go ahead.
Yes, I appreciate Commissioner Savas's comments. I would like to ask a question of Jamie and Dan in a slightly different way. If we vote yes on the RTP amendment as recommended by TPAC, does that mean that in the eyes of ODOT, we are conceding defeat on resistance to tolling, that we concede defeat on pushing back on all lanes not being tolled, that we concede defeat on our questions regarding tolling proceeds and how they're going to be used, including revenue sharing, and that we concede defeat on our concerns about diversion? That's my question.
I'll start, Jamie, if you want.
And Mark, we'll come back to you and we'll let them answer these questions and we'll come back to you for more, okay?
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Great, thank you so much. I don't think we concede defeat anywhere, to be frank. I think the answer you would probably get from ODOT is the fact, and Commissioner Savas has been part of these conversations. ODOT's response would be, we will answer your questions when we're able to program this money and finish that NEPA process, and that the region will be a part of those discussions. And that is what is essentially memorialized in the agreement that's before you today that will be referenced by these amendments. Jamie, would you like to add to that?
All right, so well, Dan, thank you.
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what staff is saying. I think what we're trying to do is give us continued space to negotiate and push back. That's what the strategy is. So by playing ball in this way and not stamping our foot down, it gives us a continued place at the table. And I think that's what, if I was to look at this strategically, that's what I see us attempting to do. It's not capitulation, it's just making sure that we've got enough words and enough information in there that it's going to give us continued room to push back and negotiate. Because in the end, they are the all-powerful ODOT, so we have to be at that table if we're going to represent our constituents. So.
And I agree with you, Commissioner Schrader. I'm going to return to Mark Scholl, but Dan Johnson, you have your hand up quickly.
As a part of my answer, I just want to honor the questions that Commissioner Scholl had raised. I want to honor the questions that Commissioner Savas has raised because they are valid questions. And they are aligned with the value statement this board adopted and the concerns that you had. And we look forward to having those answers to those questions as a part of this process as it moves forward. Again, this is a long discussion we're having now over the next couple of years, and there will be more information to come.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl, would you please continue?
Yeah, just let me say this. I feel uncomfortable. I have pressure from constituents in the cities and the CPOs about tolling. I feel like I'm sliding down a muddy slope and with a little ability to control what's going on. And at the bottom of the slope is a pool full of crocodiles with ODOT stamped on them. So
that's so wonderful.
Sorry to be terrifying, Martha, but
no, that's great.
But that's the way I feel right now, and I feel a bit helpless. I feel like and there's impending doom in this. Jody mentioned in her slide that we have the Green Star fourth quarter 2023 that we might be able to put on the brakes that late, but in my opinion, every month that goes by, we slip down that slope closer to the crocodiles a little bit more and more. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Dan and Jody, but that's a gut feeling I have.
Well, this is an untenable situation that we're in. Hope I get this quote right. If you're not at the table negotiating, you're going to be on the menu. And I think that's what we're trying to do today with these amendments. And Paul, you're smiling, you know where that came from. Yeah, thank you for that. Commissioner Fisher, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking through all of the documents. No, I want to find it. What I'm want to make sure I'm looking at correctly is number 6 of our packet, updated additional RTP language for approval by TPAC. Is that the one that we are looking at for sure? And I'm looking, there she is, there's Jamie.
I'm here. So attachment number 7 includes the structure of the actual RTP amendment with some changes that ODOT already proposed. So that's part of it for the RTP. So number 7. Number 6 includes information that was generated by staff to capture these commitments and integrate them into the RTP project. So number 7, integrate them into number 7 and into the project description that is included there in number 7. So it's both
Okay.
6 and 7 together.
That we are asking VNS to approve. So I think my big issue that I have a real problem with, the very first line of 7 says, this project would toll all lanes of I-205. So I have a really hard time agreeing to that or giving that, because I think it's really a bad idea.
Okay, can staff answer that? Sonia, can we let staff?
I'm happy to chime in on this one. So the current proposed project that ODOT is doing this NEPA study on is proposing to toll all lanes. So they have a very distinct project description that includes tolling all lanes. And that project is what they're evaluating through NEPA. So that's already kind of an assumption in their NEPA process. So that is why it says that.
So, but us agreeing to that overall, do we agree that all lanes should be tolled? I think that's what Commissioner Fisher is trying to allude to.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's almost like if we support anything, we should, I know we have a value statement. I know that we have all that. I know we've been at the table and I know, but this is,
My question is, can we approve it and strike out that language?
You could recommend approval of an amended RTP with that language struck out, but it will not change the NEPA process that they are going through or
NEPA
the
will,
assumptions with right now.
process will remain the same, yeah.
Okay, well, in this consideration, think about that. Commissioner Fisher, do you have any more comments?
well, I'm just wondering, so the NEPA looks at the environmental impacts. Is there another policy basis for this that they want to understand the greatest environmental impact of the greatest diversion if they told all 3 lanes? Is there a policy assumption that I might be missing or that we haven't talked about?
That is not my understanding. My understanding is the NEPA process is based on what their proposal is, which includes tolling all lanes.
So, I mean, and it seems like that's just what they're going to do. And then if we don't agree to this, then the consequences are that they're thinking of not proceeding with the project.
Phase 1A,
That is our understanding.
and we all know what phase 1A is.
Yeah, I think there's got to be another way through this. So I know that ODOT, I think when Martha said like it's the big bad wolf or something like that. I'm just wondering about going up to another political strategy because we're obviously not being heard on what our concerns are.
I can talk a little bit about that, but Commissioner Savas has his hand up.
Yeah, so I think to Commissioner Fisher's question, I think that's the gist of really what the RTP amendment is. It's what it's recognizing is that, and I'm going to be high level here, what it's really saying is the region agrees to regional pricing, regional mobility pricing project for really essentially all lanes of the interstates and the highway system. And it paves the way for that to happen. So we're basically saying, hey, green light region, go ahead and do that. Go ahead to be the first in the country. And by the way, the NEPA study is not even done yet.
Right.
I think I have a fundamental problem with that, especially when we our Clackamas County residents sit on a 7-mile stretch, partially rural, partially urban, that is the least ready for that kind of an effort. I think we should be exempted from the regional pricing mobility project in this section, not the first one, not included in the long run, but frankly exempted until they bring it up to standards. That said, I just want to just say that there is that saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Well, there's been some times we've been at the table and on the menu at the same time. This is one of those times.
With a knife and a fork. Okay. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, Martha, your hand is up.
Well, as I said, with the political strategy here, I think that's what we've moved into, because none of our constituents like tolling. And I know that when I said we were opposed to tolling, it kind of made a little bit of a ripple in the force out there. I should have said nothing, but so I want to apologize to folks for that. Because what I'm understanding is that we're trying to find the wiggle room with the monolith, the board collective, if you will, where resistance is futile, where maybe it won't be futile. Will this give us the space and the time to continue to negotiate what we need to have happen? I think that's the eye on the prize with this. All right. We know that we've got the board. We know they're doing the big takeover. We haven't sent in Captain Picard yet. Okay. And will this give us the time? I thought Gary would like that, right? Would this give us the time? Because,
we have Dan shaking his head yes, and we have Jamie Stansny shaking their heads yes. This gives us
that's
time.
what I think we're doing, is we're trying to make the best of a bad situation with, and in the end, the board is defeated, but that's just my analogy to all of it.
Yeah. Commissioner Fisher has her hand up, and then Paul alluded to an attorney, and I see Kathleen Rassiter has joined us. So after two commissioners speak, Paul, if you want to ask our attorney a question, I think you have something in mind. Commissioner Fisher, go ahead.
I don't understand how this doesn't give a green light and it keeps us at the table to negotiate further, to not toll all lanes and to create equity for our residents.
We could strike out, Commissioner Fisher, we could strike out the language that says all lanes. We can do that today in what has been presented to us. I have no problem with that.
If somebody can explain to me how this works, I am not in the room where it happens on this. I'm in this room where it happens. This is the most important room.
Yeah, well, we have our two selected representatives in Commissioner Scholl and Commissioner Savas. And in my introductory statements, I said I thought we needed to move forward with this, but give them flexibility, give them latitude to change on a dime, because there's going to be things there that we don't have time to go back. And we said, hey, you're our leaders in this. You go out and represent what you're thinking of the board is. So it has to be nuanced almost daily. And there's not the assurances from me either. Believe me, I really understand what you're saying about that.
Well, I'm still interested, Chair Smith, if Jamie because they believe that we do have wiggle room over this long process. And I'm interested in understanding that.
So I'll start, and then Jamie, you can build on it. I guess first and foremost, there is no issue with striking that language as a part of the recommendation, and we can empower our representatives to do that. And I'm going to be honest, this NEPA process is what ODOT is referring to, needs to be completed to answer some of the questions that we have concerns about. In no way am I asserting as a part of this effort that we're going to like those answers. I want to be clear about that. So, and that's through this next 2-year process, is continued discussions around answering questions that Commissioner Savas has raised about diversion, answering questions about transit and all of those nuances. But what it does, again, is our effort is to continue to be a part of this dialogue. This is a power that ODOT has right now. ODOT has the 129 tolling, which they can implement at their discretion. And so the desire is to continue in these discussions with them to the extent that we get to a point where we may not be consistent with their findings they have. And we may be coming back to you and sharing diversion. We may be coming back to you and sharing what their discussions are for transit. And we may not agree with those. And that's totally fine. But this is simply a discussion around advancing the study. Jamie, you want to add to that?
I just agree with everything you said, Dan. I'll just share, I think we could completely strike that language. I'm not, not certain if that would be supported, but I think we could certainly strike the language and have the representatives bring an alternative to the RTP amendment forward. That would be an important opportunity to get that concern on the record and raise it in that venue. So I certainly think that's an opportunity. And I just wanted to respond quickly to the wiggle room and the timeline conversation that you've all been having. There is 2 years essentially for us to be a part of this conversation. Commissioner Savas will engage in that, as I mentioned before, through the RTP update. One of the challenges with where we are right now is we find ourselves at the very beginning and in a very public process, and we don't have any policy guidance because the RTP doesn't address how to do congestion pricing. So it's a little bit out of order. Ideally, that conversation about the overarching policy would have already occurred, and then they could come forward with the project. But because of the timeline of the capital project, they are advancing this and are required to by the feds to move forward with that. So we find ourselves in a really awkward position. So that RTP conversation about the policy will be happening this spring, and it's already starting.
Okay. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, my question is for Commissioner Savas. Paul, would you support on the RTP amendment option 3 if we said that we will not vote on the RTP amendment until such time that the NEPA study is done? Paul?
Well,
Yeah, well, I don't think that's the direction we're headed perhaps, but what I do not know, I think staff's making a recommendation. We're hearing our regional staff talk, these TPAC committees and everything that Dan and Jamie have spoken to. Those aren't the electeds. It might very well be that either the elected leaders that sit at the JPAC table might say, heck no with the RTP amendment, and we can be in complete alignment come next week, or they could say something different. We don't know what that is. And staff has also informed me that the language that's before us today is tentative. I mean, they're going to be changing that. They are going to go through their own attorneys and rework the language anyhow. So what we have before us today is the latest and greatest, but come Friday or come Monday and Tuesday, it's going to change all over again, which is why I didn't come here prepared today to wordsmith it, because it's fruitless to wordsmith something that's going to be subject to change anyhow. So Commissioner Scholl, in answer to your question, perhaps the region might, I think if we make a good case and we're logical and we're professional about it, we might have the votes to just stall the RTP. I don't really know. I think we have to ask ourselves what really happens, what really is hung up or doesn't happen by approving or not approving the RTP. They've got the money to complete the NEPA study. This does not hang up their ability to do it. They're already doing it. It's most of that money's already spent. They've already exercised most of what that 20 million would pay for. So I don't want people to think that the NEPA study is going to be hung up. It's not. It's going to be done in 4 months. That's when we should have this conversation. 4 months when it's done, and the results are in front of us.
Well, it doesn't sound like we get that luxury of when I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. Commissioner Fisher.
I'm just trying to thread a needle that makes sure that we're clear, but also allows things to move forward. We will get, I'm understanding from Jamie and Dan, we'll get very important information from a NEPA study. And maybe looking at that in tolling all lanes would give us probably better information for Clackamas County, maybe, because I assume it's going to be more detrimental to us, which may give us what we need. I don't know. This is really tough. I like what Paul said. Let's hunt it until the NEPA study's done. I don't know why they're trying to put us in this box. This isn't good policy at all. So
Jamie?
I just wanted to clarify that according to ODOT, the NEPA study will not be completed unless this amendment occurs. So it'd be great if we could wait until the NEPA was done and then form some opinions after we have the information.
And why is that?
The federal government requires them, FHWA requires them to have this preliminary engineering phase programmed and in the RTP and MTIP to complete the NEPA process.
Then
In
they
fact,
just need to do a little asterisk by that sentence and put on the bottom, this amendment in no way, I want to say green lights, but I know that's not the word, green lights tolling of all lanes. That decision will be deferred once greater information is received. That's all we probably need to do.
I like that. I think any time that we can voice our opinion and not to toll all lanes at the same time, my opinion is it's sanity. And Paul has made the same point I'm about to make in that, in the last year, I have visited Florida and California and Texas, and they have tolling down there, but they none of those places ever toll everything at the same time. And they have construction going on all the time. And I would submit that they can't keep up construction-wise with the amount of tolling they're currently collecting when they're only tolling a few roads at a time. And you have an option whether you want to go on the toll roads or not. Obviously, people are selecting tolls. That should be their choice. Obviously, they're selecting the toll roads in these states I mentioned because construction is going forward. Now, in Oregon, it's a huge cultural shift for us. We just have not ever had that. And I acknowledge that. And I think the best that this commission can do is go forward with what's required by us of law, and that's the federal requirement that staff has addressed, and strike out all tolls, like you said, Commissioner Fisher, and even make a statement on that, because we need to be consistent in that. Not all lanes, and furthermore, not Clackamas County before the rest of the region. Also, I could even go further with that. I have said that time and time again. I don't have a problem with adding that language, and maybe Jamie and Dan are writing that down. Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, it seems that would be a resolution, is to take that piece of the language out and get on the record, okay, what you just said, because remember, you can always go back to the record to see what the legislative intent was and what our intention was as a county.
And yes,
and again, that we are still voicing that, and maybe we'll have to vote no if it doesn't pass. I don't know. That's up to you guys. I think it's a risk of voting no, because I don't know where your other colleagues are on JPAC or MPAC. You may want to do some phone calls to people, I guess, to see if you can move that vote forward in that sense. But I think that would be a solution.
so I'm going to make a recommendation.
It would be one of the solutions, and cite what we just talked about on the record again.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a recommendation, and you're free. I recommend that we accept. Oh heck sakes, my laptop shut down. God, I love these things. The recommendation staff, the number 1, vote yes on the RTP amendment as recommended by TPAC. Number 2, which is I don't know if you want to do number 3 or just, vote yes on the MTIP amendment as recommended by TPAC, but have additional language that strikes all lanes, and we add, do not toll I-205 before the rest of the region. I would recommend that we move forward. I would like to hear a motion on that. I would also like to submit, for this is the 3rd time I'm going to say this, that we give Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Scholl the flexibility to make decisions and express their concerns and negotiate when the time comes up to do that. Commissioner Schrader, do I hear a motion?
I so move. Do I have to restate it, or?
I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Schrader has moved that we vote yes on the RTP amendment as recommended by TPAC. And we vote yes on the MTIP amendment as recommended by TPAC, and strike out the language of all lanes.
Right.
No tolling on I-205 before I-5. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I don't know that we want to do that, but we want to qualify it with we want the actual amendment to be qualified with a little reference, a little asterisk by the NEPA study up at the top, but down below, this does not, whatever I said, green light, I know that green light's not the word, but put
Okay,
both of those things there. Because I don't know, I think we have to be careful about not stopping the process, because that is our risk politically.
Right.
But we need to qualify it, and we have to do that.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the exact process is. Jamie has her hands up, and then I want to call on Kathleen Rassiter. She's been listening to this conversation. Jamie, where'd you go? There you are.
I'm here. Point of clarification on the MTIP amendment. So the clarifications we're discussing, to Commissioner Fisher's point, those would all occur in the RTP amendment language. The staff recommendation on the MTIP was to move to split out the two pieces from 20 million and the 8 million to create another decision point at JPAC. So that was our recommendation, staff. Just wanted to clarify.
I know that's your recommendation, but it's not my recommendation, because we need to finish the NEPA project. If they need the 8 million to do it, let's get the NEPA done. I know staff wants to do that. I don't want to play around with that business. Kathleen Rassiter, please opine.
What would you like me to opine on, Chair?
Well, Commissioner Savas has said in his chat, did you see his chat?
I did. He's asking what the risk would be if we, what leverage we have or what we'd lose if the RTP is approved. From what I'm hearing from staff, you can't get some of the information you need because the NEPA study will not be done without this amendment being approved. They've somehow tied the project to the amendment approval. They can better explain why that's happening than I, but that means you would risk the construction that you might want, as well as the information that you'd want from the NEPA study. And it sounds like you will certainly go. What I would recommend is giving both Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Shull the flexibility that's been discussed to take your concerns and put that into language as needed, because as Commissioner Savas pointed out, you may not even have the final amendment in front of you. You don't know what's going to happen at that meeting next week. So give them the flexibility to react to that. Same with Commissioner Shull as needed. And then do what's best for Clackamas County to move forward so that you do stay at the table. If you don't do something, it sounds like you may lose that chance to be at the table.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Paul.
Yeah, it's difficult for Kathleen Raster to respond because there's so many moving pieces. There's federal laws relates to tolling, and there's tolling's divided in two different categories, and so there's a lot. It probably take staff and three attorneys probably a week or two to actually examine all that if they're not familiar with it, to know what all the ins and outs are. So someone had to be fluid with this and know it on a daily basis, and so it's just kind of unfair. So Kathleen, thank you for trying, and maybe we can talk offline about how we can get some better advice on this and who to talk to. What I did have gleaned out of the conversation, which is good, is that I think I hear strong consensus that the board strongly feels, just like the 2018 letter says, we don't believe all lanes should be tolled. So we are consistent with what we have said. So, but I do think that changing the language in the MTIP piece is important as well. I just don't know what or how that would look like. So I wouldn't want to lock ourselves into accepting the language as is, because that needs to be changed. But we don't have the final language in front of us, so it's
you just confused me on what the final thing you said. Board, we need to focus on what's in front of us today. today, my vote is that we have a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Staff, go forward. You either asterisk whatever, Commissioner Fisher, or you just make an outright language addition to it, whichever you think is best with advice from the attorney. And I think we need to call for a vote.
Yeah.
Are we clear? Commissioner Fisher? Please mute.
What Kathleen Rastetter said is the way that we should go, because it's too impossible, I think, to vote on something that we don't even know what it is, because it could change after the meeting. And I had missed that piece. So why don't we just agree, Commissioner Savas, Commissioner Scholl, they know what we want, and whatever, I don't think that we have to totally approve anything today. We can approve in concept with those qualifications to give them direction to negotiate. How does that sound, Paul? Does that give you the flexibility that you need?
So do you want me to withdraw the motion?
No.
No, okay, okay, good. Just asking,
Staff,
not inclined to.
Dan and Jamie, why are we here today? You told us that we had to vote on this.
We do.
So what are we doing?
We are here today to provide guidance and direction to your two representatives that are on those committees. That is the purpose of today's session. So, and what I have heard in this discussion is that there's a motion, but there's also flexibility the board is looking to provide those two entities should information change. Also, there's been some direction from this board on specific requests for language corrections and amendments that staff is fully aware of, and that we can package and put forward and partner with our commissioners to put forward those two committees.
So this is how I look at it. I look at, we passed this today. We give them flexibility. We've added two important, hugely important components to our residents in the county about tolling. We're making yet another statement. We can continue to make those statements, but I think that words on a paper is important going forward. We just can't go back and refer to a verbal conversation that we had on March 9th at 11:05 that so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that. That's not smart business. It's not smart business in government. It's not smart business in the private sector. We do need a piece of paper, I believe, to go forward on this. And you know, we can run it up for a vote. If this vote fails, we can either adjourn, go home. We've accomplished nothing, which says this board is not able and incapable of going forward to make a decision. And by the way, our people expect that. This stuff is tough. This stuff is hard. I don't even begin to think I can understand every single thing going forward, but I do think I know one thing. We are going to get another opportunity to make more statements, and we will get another opportunity, this board, to vote on any correction that needs to be made. Am I wrong on that? No. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, so I'm taking a stab at this, just that I make a motion that we move that the RTP be amended. Oh, what?
Okay, the thing is, we have a motion on the
Okay.
Okay, we can take that motion, vote it up or down, or Gary, am I right on Robert's Rules of Order? The maker of the motion, which is Martha, would have to change the motion. And why don't you, Sonia, ask Martha if she would like to change the motion to include whatever you're thinking.
Does that sound okay, Martha? I can just share in concept and see if this seems
Sure,
agreeable to
sure.
folks.
I would be
Okay.
fine with that. Just let's move along.
Yes.
Okay.
That we
Get her
move
done.
that the RTP be amended to proceed with the NEPA study. This approval in no way indicates that tolling all lanes of I-205 or tolling Clackamas County first is acceptable or appropriate. That gives our commissioners direction as they move forward in their negotiations.
Well, let's have discussion on that. And do you also And the rest of the motion is okay, Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's what staff is wanting us to do today, to give indication, and we need to give flexibility to our commissioners. And that seems to be the clearest and cleanest way to state it. So we do have something in writing, because Chair Smith, I think what you say is really important.
Yeah, and then on the TPAC amendment, we vote yes on the MTIP amendment as recommended by TPAC.
That one confuses me. I don't know.
Well, it's confusing, but I think the staff has made a recommendation, and these are certified smart people on this. And granted, I am not all knowledgeable on this issue, so. Dan. And Kathleen Rassiter is shaking her head yes.
I'm not sure if I need to be called on or not. I think there were there's a motion on the table. I mean, I hear the concerns that are being raised. Those are lines in the sand, very specific lines in the sand, and they may limit the ability to negotiate. I just want to be aware of that. Their values this board holds dear and true. So we are here to do the board's bidding. But I think that I might call on Jamie really quick to kind of better define and understand that MTIP amendment.
Dan, Gary Schmidt has his hand up. Let's go to him first.
Yes, commissioners, I feel you're all saying the same thing. So the motion you made, Tootie, encompasses everything Commissioner Fisher just said. You just both said it in different ways. So I'm hearing exactly the same thing. I think the motion on the table covers it, Commissioner Fisher. So I'm advising you to go forward, please.
Okay, that's okay.
So let's go forward with the original motion. I think it gets it there. I'm trying to be accommodating.
I know. Me too.
We have to, this is a sticky wicket. No, none of us like it, but we have to be at that table to negotiate.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. Thank you very much, commissioners. Shannon, please call the poll.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
I'm not sure what the motion is, because I thought that mine was very different. So I'm gonna have to say no, because I'm just lacking clarity right now.
Should I repeat the motion? Because
That might be good.
okay, so I'm going to repeat the motion again. And I'm going to try to be consistent, and Gary, correct me if I miss some. We vote yes on the RTP amendment as recommended by TPAC. Number 2, vote yes on the MTAC amendment as recommended by TPAC. Additionally, we do not support tolling all lanes on I-205. Additionally, we do not support tolling I-205 before any other tolling in the region. It includes I-5, and it may include something else that we don't know about. Correct, Martha? That's the motion you made. And I think that if we state it in our motion, staff can insert this language in the proper place moving forward. Okay, so we are at the voting stage. I just restated the motion. Shannon, where are we on the poll?
it was Commissioner Fisher.
She was up first. Okay, sorry,
No.
you drew the short straw.
So I will vote yes if our support of the amendments is qualified by those two things that Chair Smith stated. Just us stating them, talking isn't enough for me. I want to qualify our support of the amendments. And then I'm a yes, but if that's not on the table, then I'm a no.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Just,
Can somebody enlighten me how that happens?
So it's similar to, oh, pardon me, Gary, go ahead.
So procedurally, you can, I mean, commissioners, you've been really clear, but if not, you need to amend the motion to make that intent. But I don't feel that's necessary, commissioners. Staff fully understands what you're trying to accomplish here.
but our constituents may not. And that's who we are communicating with today.
You know, I disagree, Commissioner Fisher. I am as clear as the sun rises that we do not support tolling all lanes on 205. We do not support tolling I-205 before the rest of the region. I don't know how more clear the English language can get than that. Commissioner Fisher, if you would like to abstain, we need to take a vote on this and move forward.
So Chair Smith, I totally hear you, but when we unilaterally support an amendment and just say, we approve this without qualifying it, then we're approving it. And that gives the indication that we are moving forward with it. And I think that Paul, Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Scholl are very savvy and smart and can go into these negotiations with the strength of us making that qualification.
Okay, you know what? We're gonna take an up and down vote on this. If it fails, we're gonna move on to the next policy session today.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Fisher, what is your vote?
Well, if we're not qualifying it, it's a no.
I don't know what you mean by that. That doesn't even make sense to me. Qualifying it, how do you qualify something?
You make your support contingent on, you make it related to.
We said that in the motion. We said that. We're striking that out.
You can't strike it out because the feds have a requirement and this NEPA study can go forward, that we need to have it stated that our support of the NEPA study does not indicate support for tolling all lanes or tolling Clackamas County first.
Okay, what's your vote?
Well, my vote, if we don't tie it together, is a no, because I think it's so important.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher, you're a no. Shannon, continue with the poll.
Commissioner Savas,
No.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, and Mark Scholl.
Oh, he went first. He said aye.
Okay. So there's always, sorry, Mark, I just didn't hear that. The motion passes 3-2, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, we will be revisiting this again, just because we passed this today. Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Fisher, please continue with what your influence on the process can be, and that's open to any commissioners. I, on the other hand, am going to let Commissioner Scholl and Commissioner Savas move forward in their flexibility to do the best job that I know they can for Clackamas County. Commissioner Savas, please be brief. We need to move on to our second policy.
Yeah, Chair Smith, just for clarification, just a yes or a no. Your motion to approve the TPAC amendment, or to take the TPAC recommendation for the RTP amendment is contingent upon the lanes, not tolling all the lanes. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Is that correct, Commissioner Fisher?
Not the way the motion was stated, that's where there's the ambiguity. And that's why I voted no. But I think Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Scholl need that direction from this board.
I heard that direction, so I'm going to take that as a direction. Even though the vote doesn't really say that, so I'm going to take that as direct. I think staff are too. So that's why I just asked the question. If there's unanimous support to say that we don't believe all lanes should be tolled in the RMPP, thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, thumbs up. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna use that as a takeaway in going forward.
That's why we're leaving flexibility here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I need.
Okay, that's
All
all.
right. Thank you, commissioners. We're going to be back at this again, probably sooner than we want. Okay. With that in mind, Gary, what's up next?
All right, commissioners, the next session is a full hour, so can you all stay for the full hour?
Yes, we can, because we got started late because of technology.
Very good. All right.
I have a hard stop at noon, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Is there at least a quorum past noon? Commissioners? Great. Okay. Next is the Housing Authority. So Shannon, you please bring in Devin, Zach, and Jim. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Leenstra as well, Housing Commissioner Leenstra, and then the presenters, Devin, Zach, and Jim. Commissioners, you'll now be meeting as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Chair Smith, would you please announce that?
Yes, we will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County for this next policy session. Welcome, Ann Leenstra. Thank you for participating today as our sixth director.
Thank you. So today, commissioners, you are discussing the Housing Authority Public Housing Repositioning Plan. Devin Ellen is the Development Manager of the Housing Authority. We have several guests. Devin, please introduce your guests. Commissioners, today you are simply giving staff direction to move forward on the repositioning of the Housing Authority process. You're not making final decisions today on properties. You're simply giving staff direction to move forward or not on a process. Devin, would you please introduce our guests and then begin?
Hi, good morning. I'm Devin Ellen. I'm here with Jim Bronner and Zach DeGorge with Bronner Consulting. And we're here today to discuss and contemplate the next phase of the Housing Authority's Public Housing Repositioning Plan. Repositioning public housing converts assistance under HUD's Public Housing Program to assistance under HUD's Section 8 program. And why do we want to do this? Because under the public housing model, the Housing Authority is completely reliant on receiving subsidy from HUD to maintain our public housing units. Under public housing, we can't refinance or take on debt to support the substantial rehabilitation projects our properties need. Some of our public housing is 80 years old, and HAC, along with housing authorities across the country, is struggling to maintain its aging public housing stock. As some of you observed during last year's ice storms, our public housing has significant capital needs. Yet HUD's public housing programs are facing continued financial divestment at the federal level. In response, HUD has made a variety of strategies available to housing authorities to reposition their public housing. These strategies enable housing authorities to provide better maintained units while creating opportunities to leverage public and private resources to preserve and often increase their affordable housing portfolios. As you know, Clackamas County set aside nearly half of our Metro housing bond allocation to reposition our public housing. The repositioning of Hillside Manor is now complete and Hillside Park is currently underway. With the clock ticking on allocation of our remaining Metro housing bonds, we are now turning our attention to the remaining public housing portfolio. This includes 2 100-unit developments in Oregon City and our 145-unit scattered site portfolio. Last year, the Housing Authority commissioned Bronner Consulting to develop recommendations for the strategic repositioning of our remaining public housing portfolio. HAC's repositioning goals going into this are twofold. One, we want to increase the overall inventory of affordable housing options while minimizing resident displacement. And 2, we want to ensure HAC's housing is safe, well-maintained, and financially sustainable to operate. The resulting public housing repositioning study is part of a proactive strategy to align HAC operations to the realities of the HUD funding environment and to advise the Housing Authority and this board about the repositioning strategies best suited to our remaining public housing portfolio. And with that, I will turn it over to Zach and Jim with Bronner to introduce themselves and review their findings and recommendations. And I'm hoping that Zach will be able to share his screen for the presentation.
Zach, you're on mute.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, let me see if I can share my screen here. Can everyone see that?
I can.
All right. Well, thank you, Devin, for the introduction, and really glad to be here and appreciate everyone spending the time to take a look at this. And I know we've discussed this with a few of those on the call today, but I'm Zach DeGorg with Bronner and Company, and I'm accompanied by Jim Bronner as well. We were brought on to work with the Housing Authority back in actually March of last year through an RFP process. And a little bit of background quickly on us is that we primarily work with housing authorities in the Northwest. We have a long history of specifically work with housing authorities and some nonprofits, but primarily restricted to the Northwest area. And I've been doing it for quite some time. And so we have some clients in the metro area as well, and have some experience working in Oregon and quite a bit of experience working to reposition assets. And so that's really most of what we do when we get involved with housing authorities is take a look at existing assets and ways to reposition them to further affordable housing goals long-term, provide, as Devin said, additional affordable housing, usually through leveraging of existing assets. So that's really the primary goal that we had in reviewing assets is how can we leverage those assets, reposition them to further those goals of the agency. So we were originally brought in looking at Hillside Park, which is currently a development that is underway. And so this specific portfolio review didn't really examine that project specifically in depth because it was already had a plan moving forward. So this was really geared towards the remaining public housing assets that the authority has, which includes 3 primary portfolios. What we refer to as the scattered site portfolio, which is primarily single family homes that are spread throughout the county, Clackamas Heights and Oregon City View Manor. That's the primary basis for our review. We put together a report, provided that to the authority. And this is really a quick summation of what our findings were to share with the board to hopefully move forward. And please also feel free to interrupt me as I go through. I know we're short on time, so I will try and be quick, but do not hesitate to interrupt me.
Thank you, Zach, for that. Commissioners, I assume you're familiar with this packet and what is being asked of us today, and I'd like to hear your opinions on that. When I was a commissioner last time, and I, of course, went on all the tour of our housing, and I just looked at some of these places, and I said, well, where they're positioned, it's number one, it's really valuable real estate. And the need for housing, you know, that was what, 6 years ago, at least 6, 7 years ago was so great. Well, the need for housing is even greater today. And I did not feel at that time that we were taking the best advantage of the expansive real estate that we own in our HAC portfolio. And I'm so pleased that we were able to bring in these experts and really put together the same plan that I envisioned years ago. And what happened, why it didn't happen years ago is because HUD never gave us the authority, right, Devin? And it wasn't until HUD has decided that, Clackamas County is not alone in this. This is an epidemic-wide problem throughout the United States of America. And we have just, I think, an awesome opportunity to go ahead and approve this overview. We're not making decisions today, correct, Gary, on the particulars. We're just giving them the go ahead to proceed. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Zach, please stop sharing your screen while the board talks. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That was correct, Chair Smith, yes.
Oh, Paul, I see your hand up and I didn't see it before. So any commissioners or staff, please chime in. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, I read the packet, so I have a pretty good idea, but and I want to make a statement so that you understand my question a little bit better. And so I understand what we're doing today, and to Chair Smith's point, I understand what we're not doing today, that we have other opportunities in the future. But as I see it right now, the plan changed because I think originally we were going to we're going to sell off the Oregon City off of Holcomb Road property, the Oregon City Manor properties, and sell that on the market. And I think the packet really is suggesting that we actually develop that similar to what we're doing at Hillside. Is that correct? Shake a head. We're not. Okay. So I'll need explanation on that. And the other assumption that I think I gleaned out of this is that, well, I'm gonna back up. The question I have, now that you shook your head, no, the question I have is, we own the land at Hillside in Oregon City Manor and Clackamas Heights. We own that land. And I want to be sure that whatever we do, and I don't mind switching it from one model to another, you know, under the HUD rules, but I just want to make sure that, you know, we're looking long-term. So let's just say we develop a property with a 60-year low-income housing tax credit plan, that we still have ownership in the future, because the land, I don't want to end up with no housing inventory, because they took the option of selling the properties and not continuing on after the 60-year period or 50-year period. So I just want to make sure we're retaining ownership on each of these models.
Who can answer that?
Devin, do you want me to take that?
Sure.
Yeah, so there's a couple different options, and I think what we've proposed is that in addition to having those encumbrances in place that are usually brought on by the LIHTC regulatory agreements, is that the authority would maintain ownership of the land and lease those to the partnership over a 99-year period. And so irrespective of existing affordability covenants, the authority would still maintain ownership of the land, which also brings affordability covenants. And so that gives more control to the authority, that even though this is the standard way that really all affordable housing is built now with using low-income housing tax credits, by leasing these properties to the partnership, there's long-term ownership by the authority. And there's other ways in which we'd probably recommend after these next steps of phases of doing more feasibility, but having the authority's role as potentially general partner in that partnership further strengthens with belts and suspenders the authority's ownership long-term of the properties. So the short answer is there's a lot more than just those regulatory agreements that ensure that this is held in the public trust long-term.
Okay. So could you, so I do know that I did, well, again, I know where Clackamas Heights is. I know where the Holcomb property, Oregon City Manor is. So what's the plan? Are we still going to sell the property?
Yeah, our recommendation was, this is like the short answer, selling the Oregon City View Manor property, redeveloping Clackamas Heights to increase density so that essentially the residents from Oregon City View Manor could move to the newly developed Clackamas Heights property, and then through the disposition of the scattered sites homes as well as the Oregon City View Manor homes, there's sufficient capital to build elsewhere in addition to the redevelopment of Clackamas Heights. So yeah, that part has not changed.
Okay, I did, the way I interpret it, apparently I was wrong, so I'm mistaken. Thanks for the clarification. The way I interpret it was the scattered sites, the individual single family homes that turning those over into a land ownership opportunity and whatnot. I understood that. I didn't think that the Oregon City Manor was in that same category. So thank you. No further explanation needed.
Any further questions for the presenters on this? Commissioner Shaw.
Yes, question on the redevelopment of Clackamas Heights, the demolition of the existing 100 buildings, is that covered by HUD? And for the proceeds from the scattered site units, how much do you need to sell in order to support the redevelopment of Clackamas Heights?
Yeah, great question. So as far as demolition, most likely the source of funding would be from the actual tax credit transaction itself. So there would be multiple funding sources that would pay for construction and demolition. HUD directly under the program that we're proposing doesn't provide capital funds necessarily for that redevelopment. Most of the sources are actually private. So there's tax credit equity, there's a new first mortgage, there'd be some existing public housing funds that the authority has in hand. So those are capital fund and operating reserves. So those are funds that would go into the project, but they're not new funds that would come from HUD. So that's one of the advantages of this program, is that it does not rely on applying to HUD for something that there's a chance of not getting. Kind of previously like choice neighborhood initiatives and things like that. They're very risky in the sense of you have no idea if you're going to be successful because everyone's applying for the same thing. So here, the program that approves this is called RAD, Rental Assistance Demonstration, and Section 18, and it's non-competitive in the sense that there are, as long as you meet the qualifications, HUD will approve of the program. And then the second part of your question. The amount is actually of the single family homes we estimated could range in excess of $34 million. for the sale of those homes. And I should caveat that also anticipates that the majority of those are sold for home ownership purposes. So that already takes into account slightly, some cost to rehab the homes and sell slightly below market. That is in excess of the funds that would be needed from the Housing Authority to make that rehabilitation and redevelopment occur at Clackamas Heights. So there'd be excess funds along with the sale of Oregon City View Manor that would allow for new development in other parts of the county.
Thanks, Zach.
Are you finished, Commissioner Scholl? Yes.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm kind of just, my brain isn't quite wrapping around. I understand the money side of it, but when you have the scattered site, which can meet different types of needs for housing, I'm just not quite understanding why we would want to eliminate that as part of the Housing Authority's portfolio. And I'll just give a little bit about my lens. I was very involved for a big chunk of my life in deinstitutionalizing and stopping segregation for people with developmental disabilities in an institution. And the model for getting people supported was to scatter sites all over in group homes, foster homes, and have people integrated within the community. So given that that is a good societal outcome for people, how is it good for us to get rid of that option within the Housing Authority portfolio?
Devin, do you want me to answer that one?
Sure, we can tag team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Also, from there's the broader lens, I think, nationwide of what's occurring, and then I think there's the lens of specifically in the county. So on a larger scale, this is a theme that's been occurring for quite some time of housing authorities disposing of their single-family homes, and the primary reason historically has been the cost to maintain those. So as part of the report that we put together, we actually looked at the amount of time it would take just a property manager or a maintenance employee to visit each one of the single family homes. And it took over an entire day's worth, basically, just to stop for 1 minute at each single building. So the maintenance and oversight is extremely difficult. And that's not, it's specific to the county, just how spread out those single family homes are, but it's a theme that is occurring across the country. And it's something that HUD has been encouraging over the past decade. So they've actually changed some of their regulation to allow the disposition just purely because a portfolio is scattered site in nature. So that's on a nationwide level, that's the trend of trying to invest in higher density housing, just because it's easier to maintain and operate. And two, just from a development perspective, it's
Thank you, Zach. I'm going to call on Devin to finish.
Yeah, sure. So I think that's a great question, and the plan that we're looking at is preserving some of these scattered site units through a land trust model for first-time home buyers using Metro bonds as the gap filler. So that has the effect of preserving the affordability of these units and keeping them in the public trust, affordable. So, I think that there's a lot that still needs to be determined about the scattered site plan. We've identified a great consultant to help us put together a plan, which we'll bring, forward. But, certainly we may hold on to some of those units through this process for, special needs populations and things like that.
Okay, I did a little quick math referring to Commissioner Fisher's. So we have 145 scattered sites, and you said the value on those would be about $34 million. You do quick math, you could sell those homes for $234,000 each, would be the average median. I understand some would be more, some would be less. I don't know anywhere that you can buy a home for $200,000, and that certainly would be going to low-income people, and they would be able to enjoy home ownership where it previously would have been denied to them. I don't even think Habitat Humanity can build a home for $200,000. So I think that is a very positive step going forward. And I have seen some of these scattered sites, and frankly, we're not doing a good job at maintaining them. Some of them look pretty awful, and Ann Leenstra is shaking her head. So I think we can do better on our scattered sites with that. And I would agree with Zach, having a portfolio all over the county of these is really costly. And then you look at the labor shortage, you look at the labor shortage and the availability of people who wanting to work on a property like this compared to the new construction going on. Those folks are going to hop on the new construction because they can make more money in a short amount of period of time, and their skills are in demand for those areas. So I really like that. Commissioner Fisher, did you have any more questions?
Nope, not right now.
Okay, other commissioners with questions? Staff, is there anything else that you need to present today?
No, I don't think so.
I love this idea. With that in mind, I will entertain a motion to approve option 1.
I move to approve option 1.
Second.
And I'm just going to read that for a point of clarification. Thank you, Commissioner Savas, for moving option 1, and Commissioner Schrader for the second. Approval to pursue the recommendations as outlined in the repositioning, understanding that all binding actions will be brought to the board for review and approval. So we will have another look at this, and we will be able to offer more of our opinions and ask questions as we move forward. Thank you very much for your presentations. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I'm curious, as far as community outreach and engagement, what was the process in this?
Well, it'll vary depending on the project. Certainly with Clackamas.
No, I mean for this, in preparation of this.
Oh.
For the repositioning?
Yeah, for putting these recommendations together.
Well, I mean, I think that we will be going through a public process with each of the portfolios as we develop a plan. We don't want to, get in front of folks without a plan in place. We've certainly been communicating with our residents about our repositioning plans, over the last 4 or 5 years. So I don't think that will be a surprise to them, but there'll be a community process as we get redevelopment plans or disposition plans in place.
Okay, so but as far as what you're bringing to us today, there hasn't been any community engagement.
Well,
Commissioner Schrader?
all right, I know Commissioner Savas had his hand up though. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Savas, whatever.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I think I found the board packet pretty informative. I want to just thank staff for putting together a very comprehensive board packet. And as I read the board packet, there has been years, quite a bit of community engagement and the more vulnerable populations. In there, I thought there was, granted quite a bit. I didn't necessarily see it for the scattered site individual homes, but I did see it for the Oregon City Manor and Clackamas Heights. So it's been, and Hillside, there's been years of community engagement.
Commissioner Leenstra, I would like to call on you for your opinion on this and how you viewed this particular situation.
We went through that process with Hillside Manor, and I was living there at the time. We were brought in every step of the way. It was very difficult for a lot of people to understand, but it moved smoothly. I understand this is the first time the county's ever done anything like this. And I think this is our only way forward to better housing for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leenstra, for your support on that. Any more comments before we take the poll?
Just one, Chair, and that is that my recollection is the Oregon City Manor property off of Holcomb is probably the more a difficult one for public involvement because those people will be displaced from the site. There's no going back if the property is going to be sold. So that's where we need to do, I think, probably our greatest amount of outreach going forward.
That's a good point. And I think staff is nodding their head that they're in agreement with that and you're prepared to do that, correct, Devin? Devin, did you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that, you know, as a requirement of the Section 18 process, we have to do extensive community outreach. We have to get the local jurisdictions on board with the process. So we will certainly be doing so. And the plan for Oregon City View Manor is, you know, that we'll be able to develop units to accommodate them at the Clackamas Heights redeveloped site. So we're planning to do, you know, more than 200 units at that site, which would allow us to accommodate all the Oregon City View Manor residents just down the road. I mean, it's still disruptive and it is displacement, but there is a plan to address that. And we wouldn't, you know, potentially dispose of the property if that's the route we end up going until after Clackamas Heights was complete.
Yeah, you say it's disruptive, but these people get to move into brand new units, correct?
Correct.
That's the upside. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, so I really appreciate the packet. I thought it was very well put together also. But I think my overall concerns is what we do through the Housing Authority really does lay the groundwork for what types of communities we're supporting and we're building. So things, just stopping segregation, we have seen that, you know, like how many years ago, anybody see Columbia Villa? You know, that was a great place. And then over the years, the segregation and the way that that was created became untenable and it had to all be redone. When you segregate populations, you don't create good societal outcomes. So this doesn't give me enough information. I mean, I know what Devin said is like, oh, I really like that, but I'm not getting enough information when it comes to disposing of the scattered site. I don't like putting all the same types of people, having government support, putting them all together. I think if we're going to do development, we should do mixed income, potentially mixed use, have a variety, create a community that supports all different types of people. I'm very concerned about getting rid of scattered site places for people to live that are in neighborhoods and throughout the community to then put them all in one place. So that is a concern from a policy perspective.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure that HUD allows for mixed use development and or commercial or retail on that. So we really, the fact that we've owned these sites, they're some of the oldest sites in the entire state of Oregon. I think going forward, our hands would be somewhat tied to mixed use, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. But I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Fisher. There is a motion on the table. We will get an opportunity to come back and nuance any specific current concerns that each of us have on this. And so we need a starting point to move forward, and that's what we're to do today as a starting point to move forward. Shannon, it's time to call for a vote on this. Please call the poll.
Commissioner Leenstra.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Abstain.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0-1. Thank you, commissioners, for all your fine work today. We've had wonderful, robust conversations. I hope everybody feels satisfied that everybody was heard and had an opportunity to contribute. With that in mind, this meeting is adjourned.